Well, let's talk now to the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, who joins us from Westminster. Good morning to you. We'll come on to what was a busy day of announcements for you yesterday in just a second. But first of all, your reaction to those awful events in Southport yesterday.
It's beyond the worst nightmare of any parent to see what unfolded yesterday in Southport, and like the rest of the country, my thoughts and prayers are with the families affected and with the children who are still in critical condition. Everybody will be thinking as well of the emergency services, particularly those in the NHS at Alder Hospital, who were responding yesterday to terrible scenes. And I'd like to give my thanks to all of the emergency services who respond so quickly, including the police yesterday.
Yes, absolutely. As we said, though, yesterday was a really busy day as far as announcements are concerned. You're, 3 weeks or so into the job, and you've laid out what you say is a big black hole in the country's finances. I want to come to some of those announcements in turn if we can, but let's start with one that has got a lot of people pretty angry this morning, that decision to remove the winter fuel payments on those that are not claiming pension credit. We know one of the biggest costs for people right now is energy and food, particularly for older people. You've chosen to remove support for older people when it comes to energy. Why that decision?
Yesterday I set out a £22 billion black hole in the public finances this year, and not acting on that was not an option, because it is essential to preserve economic and financial stability in our economy. And without that, we have a repeat of what Liz Truss achieved in her short time as Prime Minister, of financial market turbulence, putting pensions at risk, sending mortgage rates and rents through the roof. I was not willing to put our economic stability at risk, and so it was necessary yesterday to take tough decisions to bring stability back to our public finances and to get a grip of the spending pressures. The decisions I made on winter fuel payment yesterday are not decisions I wanted to make. They were not decisions that I expected to make. But when confronted with a £22 billion black hole, I had to act. And now I've preserved winter fuel payments for pensioners on pension credit. So a single pensioner with an income of just below £12,000 will continue to receive the winter fuel payment, and a pensioner couple on an income of just under £18,000 will continue to receive the winter fuel payment. It's important to preserve those payments for the pensioners who need it most. And in addition to that, I'll be working with the Department for Work and Pensions to ensure that we increase the take-up of pension credit so that everybody that's entitled to it and winter fuel payment gets that support. It was a difficult decision yesterday, but in the circumstances that I faced, the circumstances I inherited, it was the right decision, alongside other difficult decisions that this new government was forced to make yesterday to fix the mess left by the previous government.
Yeah, you talk about the people who don't claim it currently. We were just talking to a former pensions minister making it clear that 800,000 pensioners who could be entitled to claim that pension credit do not do so. We know that it is a bit of a blunt instrument being able to offer it to everybody. But is it the right decision? It'll save you £1.5 billion, yet at the same time you've handed a public sector pay increase worth £9.4 billion. So you're taking money off pensioners that saves you £1.5 billion and handing £9.4 billion to public sector workers. That's not fair, is it?
Well, I'll just say in terms of pension credit, we are going to be merging pension credit with housing benefit to increase take-up of pension credit, and we'll be working with older people's charities and also with local government to identify people who should be getting pension credit, because I want everybody that's entitled to pension credit to get it, and also to be getting the winter fuel payment. But you're right, yesterday we accepted the recommendations of the independent pay review bodies. These independent pay review bodies were given their remit by the previous government, and extraordinarily the last government did not give them a remit for what was affordable, and so the independent pay review bodies have come back with recommendations in line with private sector pay increases, and we've accepted that. And the cost of inaction and not accepting those recommendations is not zero. The analysis that I published yesterday shows that just last year, the cost of industrial action within our National Health Service cost our economy £1.7 billion and resulted in 1.4 million lost appointments and operations in our National Health Service. We can't carry on like this. We had to fix the mess that the previous government left, including the terrible situation in the National Health Service with waiting lists of 7.6 million. I hope the announcement yesterday will draw a line under the industrial unrest and will mean that patients of all ages, but particularly the elderly, are able to get the appointments when they need it in our National Health Service, and so we have functioning public services again.
That £9.4 billion figure, though, that pay deal that you've handed to the public sector workers, you talk about a £20 billion black hole in our finances, yet at the same time handing nearly half of that to public sector workers. You talk about difficult choices. One of those could have been not offering that money to public sector workers.
Well, of that £9.4 billion, we've asked government departments to absorb £3.2 billion of it. We will do that through a combination of cutting down on consultancy spend, reducing the government communications bill and making 2% efficiency savings in back office so that we can properly reward our frontline public services. We all know that there's massive recruitment and retention problems in our public services, whether it is our armed forces that keep us safe, our police officers and prison staff who protect us, our NHS frontline workers who keep us well and healthy, and indeed our teachers who keep us educated. There's a huge recruitment and retention crisis because pay has fallen behind private sector pay this last decade or so. And at the beginning of this programme we talked about the emergency services. We owe a huge amount to our public sector workers who kept our economy and society going through the pandemic and are there with us at some of the most challenging times. I think it is right that public sector workers are rewarded properly for the work that they do. And I make no apology for yesterday ensuring that the independent pay review body recommendations were accepted. But we made difficult decisions to cut money spent in the back office to be able to pay for those pay increases.
We've just spoken to the Deputy Chair of the British Medical Association here on the programme this morning, and essentially she told us that, yeah, if you strike, you get what you want. So essentially what you're saying to a lot of workers right now is if you don't like it, strike and we'll come and pay you. You're going to have a queue at your door of people asking for more money, aren't you?
We need to treat public sector workers with respect and we need to engage with them.
But is that the right message?
The previous government didn't even negotiate, didn't even talk to the junior doctors. And that's why for months and months we were in a situation where people's hospital appointments and operations were cancelled at the last minute, causing huge pain and agony. People voted for change 3.5 weeks ago, and part of the change that people voted for was public services that actually worked, that people could send their children to school because there wasn't industrial action, so that people could have hospital appointments and operations, so people could phone up a GP and get an appointment. We are determined to deliver that change, and part of that change is treating public sector workers with respect and failing to implement the independent recommendations of those pay review bodies, I'm afraid, would have resulted in further disruption and would have made it even harder to recruit and retain the nurses, the doctors, the teachers, the soldiers, the army officers that we need to keep our country safe, educated and healthy. And so that's why we accepted those independent pay review body recommendations. And the previous government, they had the recommendations from the teachers' pay review body on their desk before the election. They didn't act. They could have rejected it and said it was not affordable. They didn't do so. They left it to the new government to fix the mess that they had created, and that's what I'm starting to do. That's what the difficult announcements that we made yesterday are all about, fixing the mess that the previous government have left for us to clear up.
You talk about honesty and taking difficult decisions. One of the other things you announced yesterday, of course, was that scrap on social care costs. The Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, speaking to the BBC just 6 weeks ago, said one of the things we've committed to is the cap on care costs. We're not planning to come in and unpick and scrap that. You're 3 weeks into this new job and you've done exactly that. Why should people trust you?
When we came into office, I asked officials to do an urgent review of the state of public spending and public finances. I published that analysis to Parliament yesterday. I have to tell the country that the previous government made commitments without having any money to pay for them, including on social care, including on the hospital programme, including road and rail upgrades.
You have made that point. I'm interested why people should trust you now, given that you promised to do things on the campaign that you've now reversed 3 weeks into the job.
because the previous government did not put any money behind these things. We did not know that going into the election campaign. We did not know that until this analysis has been conducted. The Institute of Fiscal Studies yesterday, the independent institute, said that some of the things that we announced yesterday were not known by the public, were not known by the opposition, were not known by them during the election campaign. This is new information yesterday. And I've got a very simple principle. If you cannot afford it, you cannot do it. And they were difficult decisions yesterday. But if the previous government did not put money behind schemes, and we have a £22 billion black hole this year alone in our public finances, that does necessitate difficult decisions. These were not the decisions I wanted to make. These were not the decisions that I expected to make. But we have to clear up this mess. We cannot leave unchecked a £22 billion black hole in our public finances. We saw what happened when the previous Prime Minister, Liz Truss, left a black hole in our public finances. It put pensions in peril. It sent mortgage rates through the roof, causing huge anxiety and distress for working families and pensioners up and down our country. I am not going to make those same mistakes. So I am clearing up the mess that was left. That does involve difficult decisions, but government involves difficult decisions. And I'm determined to put our public finances and our public services on a firmer footing after the chaos and irresponsibility that the previous government presided over.
OK, Chancellor Rachel Reeves, it's good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.